Yeah, welcome, folks. I'm Chad with Apsona. I have Rob with me today, and we are on session 3 of our 6-week series about Apsona filtering and reporting. And if you missed the last 2 videos, I will make a quick announcement that will help you catch up. So today we're going to get a little bit more into the weeds. We're going to talk about the auto-deduplication aspect of Apsona reporting and metric fields and kind of how they work together. And I believe we'll have enough time, if I talk fast enough, to talk a little bit about some kind of tips and tricks for using reports in our mail merge tool. So as I mentioned, if you missed the last 2 series, we got our last 2 videos uploaded into a playlist. So we have an Apsona training series playlist for our filtering and reporting series. And I encourage you to check those out. And Rob, if you have the link, if you could throw that in the chat so people can get access to that playlist. This, of course, is going to grow week after week until we hit our last 6th session, and then it will remain there for you to be able to access. So we're excited to present that. For new folks or folks watching the recording outside of the context here, just a quick bit about Apsona. Apsona, Sona in Hindi means gold, and so we call ourselves the golden app, and many admins do as well because it is just a lifesaver. It allows admins to save a bunch of time every day as they do their work in Salesforce. Been around since 2009, on the App Exchange since 2011. Thousands of folks have just been super happy with Apsona. We are data model agnostic. We can work with any data model you have, custom object, standard object, managed package. It's all available to Apsona. All right. Wow, that's a lot of text. We're going to jump into the meat of our presentation today. I kind of have a reason for leaving this text up. First, I want to just highlight that everything I talk about, I try to back up with our documentation. So if I come to my desktop, Apsona has a great page of documentation, and this specific link that Rob has put into the chat comes right to this section that starts talking about automatic deduplication. But I know that a lot of people are busy and they don't have time, so I put the meat of what I wanted you to hear as text so you could pause the video and look at it more specifically. I found that our late co-founder Sridhar did an amazing job of presenting all of Apsona's kind of details on paper, and auto-deduplication and metric fields are described in very good detail. So I highly encourage you to read it and soak it in. This sounds kind of like such a small detail of the overall concept of reporting, but these 2 concepts play in a lot as to how to get your reports to look just right and have the right information. So that's why I'm spending a little bit more time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically jump into Salesforce and kind of like talk through what is on the screen here. But before I do, let me just kind of like highlight what we're talking about. So as the documentation says, data records in a report are automatically deduplicated. So if I have a contact report and I don't have any filters, so there's thousands of contacts in the system, but I just put in the salutation field, Mr., Mrs., Junior, whatever, the report will shrink to all of the unique data points that are presented there, which is just like maybe 10 values. So to exemplify that, here we have it. I just did a report based on the documentation. So this is a contact report, and I'll go to the edit screen here. And I have simply gone to the contact object and put in the salutation. And when I run it, I've had a little bit of trouble. Okay, good, it's running fast. So we only get 3 lines. That doesn't mean there's 3 contacts, and we've even got a blank here. So what's going on there? This is the deduplication concept of Apsona reports. Whatever data you asked for, it's going to give it to you, but it's not going to repeat a bunch of stuff unless you tell it to. So let's play a little bit more with this idea. So I have salutation. Why don't I I'll put in the account name. Still not the unique contact, but the account name. Let's save and run this. Now I'm getting a lot more Misters and Misses, but I have accounts to back them up. See if I order this by account. I have 2 edge communications, and that's because there's a Mr. in the edge communications and there's a Mrs. So it's expanding it just enough to give you the unique combination of data per row. I want you to remember that concept of kind of this per row. that we have two contacts for edge communications, one with a salutation of, or I'm sorry, we may have more. We have contacts with a Mr. in edge communication, and we have contacts with a Miss in edge communications. Let's edit it further. Let's go back to the contact and let's put in the full name. Full name, we'll stick it right here, save and run. Let's order it by account again to kind of make sense. Okay, so it turns out we did have two contacts in edge communications. We had a Sean and an Elnora. Down here, we have two Misters. So before I added the full name, this was one row of Mr. at United Oil and one row of Miss at United Oil. But when we added the names, it blew it up because there was two contacts of each. So the concept here is that every time you add more data, it's going to expand the report to give you that unique combination of all the values that you're asking for. Let's look at our slide and talk a little bit more about how this can be used. Let's say, let me go to my next slide and see if I had something that I wanted to show more specifically. Okay. So if there's any questions about kind of that initial concept of how the report automatically expands and contracts based on the data you add, please throw it in the chat, or sorry, in the Q&A section, and we'll try to answer it live. So let's kind of play around here a little bit some more. I'm gonna go to accounts. I'm gonna go to reports. I'm gonna just do a new report here, and I'm gonna say account name, and I'm gonna get. If I save and run this, I got to name it first. I'm going to get, I think, 13 rows because we've got 13 organizations in this dev org. Okay, now let me go back. Now I'm going to add the opportunities for these accounts. So I'm going to go to opportunity and I'll say ID. I'm just going to get all the opportunities IDs. Save and run. So now it's expanded it to show multiple rows for one account. So one of the more realistic ways that this kind of deduplication comes into play is, are you trying to show the child records of a parent, or are you just trying to get data for the parent? I could do a similar report from opportunities. I could go opportunities, go to a report, new, and I can pull in my opportunity, or I could pull in my account name and get the same kind of results. It's an opportunity report, but I am, I'm only asking it to tell me the account name. So I get back to this 13 rows. So it can be a little confusing if you're not used to kind of the concept. You might go, hey, why am I only, there's more than 13 opportunities in my system. It's because you're only asking it to show you account name. And so it's that unique data. Okay, I think I've drilled that in a little bit. I want to make one more point that I found interesting and has gotten into my way before. So I wanted to kind of highlight that, and here we go. So I'm on an account tab. I'm doing an account report. I pulled in the account name. I get 13 records. And this is a metric field, which we're going to talk about in just a second, that just says, hey, how many records exist that have this name? And it happens to just be one. Now I'm on a contact report. I'm just showing the account name. I put in this number of records and I'm seeing different numbers. It's not just one, it's a bunch. And this is kind of something to demonstrate that based on the object that you're working on, which in this case is contacts, there's definitely more contacts in these accounts than what we would see if we only have the account name. But the number of contacts, the number of records that have an account name of Edge Communications is 2, because there's 2 contacts in that Edge Communications organization. But when I'm on the account report, I'm not looking at contacts, I'm just looking at accounts, and there's only 1 account of Edge Communication. So these small nuances can be confusing, but once you kind of understand the concept, you go, oh, it's showing that many records because it's just deduplicating down to the account name. So hopefully that's clear enough. It's a kind of in the weeds detail, but I think an important one. Okay, so the last point to make here is that, let's go back to this contact report. If I really wanted to see like all of the records that are represented in the report, probably the cleanest or maybe the most thorough way to do that would be to get into the world of IDs, because we know that it's a unique ID per record. So I'm in a contact report. I'm only showing accounts. But if I were to go to my contact ID, throw that in. Oops, sorry, not a metric field. We're not there yet, Chad. Contact ID, save and run. Now we're getting a whole bunch of rows because there's many contacts per account. So if you want to get every single record that's represented by the filter of the report, the easiest way is ID, but there's other ways, like a name is probably safe in this case, depending on the quality of your data. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. Metric or aggregate values. If you could throw these links in the chat, that would be super helpful. There's 2 helpful links. I'm going to go to them really quickly. This is, again, it's a section of a larger article about single-step reports, and it's talking about metric fields. And again, this is extremely thorough documentation. I was just so pleased with how well it explains how to use metric fields along with this deduplication concept. It talks about mixing aggregate, meaning metric fields, or non-aggregate columns. It talks about if you just show one column, what's it doing? So it really kind of breaks down these concepts. And once you can kind of have a good kind of intuitive mastering of metric fields and deduplication, you really can just kind of fine tune your reports really well. This is the other article that talks about metric functions within the larger searching and filtering article. So 2 kind of really good solid references to metric fields that are in these URLs. So what are metric fields or aggregate fields? Basically, I like to think of them as roll-up fields. They are calculations that are done live in the report that can sum, provide the highest value, the lowest value, the average value, a distinct count, a record count. It's the ability to aggregate data at a parent level. And that's a concept I want to drive home, is that in order to use a metric field, you really need a parent to group that data under, which I'll exemplify in just a second. So some ideas that we're going to get into, if you want to show the total sum of opportunities for each account, you can use a metric field to do that, rather than having to build a roll-up field and get another field on your account to receive that data and run that roll-up field and hit all the errors, blah, blah, blah. If you just need to kind of have a quick access to total sum of opportunities for an account, you can do it with metric fields. You can break it down even further and say, I want to see a total sum of opportunities for accounts by state, or for states by account, or whatever. We're going to kind of look at this also. You can say, what's the most recent opportunity that has shown up per account? You can use a metric field to grab the highest value of a date. You can do a record count, say, oh, I've got all these users, they've got all these tasks. How many tasks does every user have? There's a record count metric field that I'm going to show you. And then this last use case, I'll explain a little bit in more detail, because I found it really valuable to a customer recently and just want to highlight it, talking about kind of identifying unique years of purchasing for a customer. Okay, let's jump into Salesforce and kind of like tease all these out. Any questions yet coming up? All right, everybody's excellent.
Quiet group.
Okay, let's see. We went through these. We went through this. We did that, or we didn't do that. That's going to be one of my other ones. Okay, so I think I need to, I think I'll back up here and I'll start to use this report as an example. So let's get this out of here. So save and run. We've got our 13 accounts. Okay. Let's say that I want to know how many accounts I have in each state. So I'm going to go to the account object. I'm going to get rid of account name. I'm going to put in billing state. Oops, not the metric field, billing state. Now I want to know how many accounts do we have per billing state. So I'm going to use my record count concept. So I've got my billing state, and remember, we're going to get a return that's deduplicated by billing state. So if there's 10 states represented in my org, I'm going to see 10 rows. That doesn't mean there's 10 accounts. Metric field, number of records. So this is kind of just an out-of-the-box thing you throw on here, and the metric field is going to run on every unique row of data. So let's see what it looks like. Oh, good. We do have more than just a bunch of ones. Okay, so we have all of our billing states, and we have how many accounts, because that's the report we're working on, how many records are in each state. That's really cool. It's right out of the box. You don't have to do grouping. You don't have to export all that stuff. We got a blank here. That means that there is an account that doesn't have a billing state. So that's an important note to kind of make. But we get a nice record count right out of the gate with just number of records. Let's do, I think I had some tests. Let's see. Let's try this one. Let me see what I did here. Okay. So we've got our account name. That's going to give us our 13 accounts. Great. Go back to edit. We're still on an account report. Let's see our total opportunities for each account. We're going to go to opportunity, which we know is a child object because it has a star next to it. That's from a previous session. And we're going to go to amount, but now we're going to go down to the metric fields section. So the metric fields are always at the bottom. Actually, let me back out of here and get rid of this so that I can show you a more full picture. Metric fields or aggregate fields are going to show up for any field that you can do these aggregate calculations on. So do I want to know count of something? Do I want to know sum, lowest, average, highest? It's going to be specific to the type of field it is. So I've got close date here. I can get the most recent close date, the oldest close date. I can get a count of the number of distinct dates that exist for all the opportunities for these accounts. Really powerful tools just right at your fingertips. We wanted to do amount and we wanted to do sum. But check this out. We can also do the highest right next to it. We can also do the lowest. Let's do a close date. Close date. And let's do the most recent. And finally, let's do the number of opportunities, not the number of accounts. So we're on the account report, but we're going to the opportunity object and getting number of records. So we're going to count how many number of records are live under each of these accounts. So let's run this. Did a whole bunch of different things. So we didn't lose our single row per account, and that's because all of these metric fields are aggregates. So they're purposefully summing and doing calculations and bringing it back down to that row of unique data combinations, which at this point is just one field. So account, and this tells us all the opportunities equal 105. The biggest opportunity is 105. The smallest opportunity is 100. The most recent opportunity is February 12th, 23, and there's 7 opportunities total. Super powerful, amazing. I love it. I love metric fields. Give me a 0 in the chat if I have lost you. Give me a 5 in the chat if you're just eating this up, and give me whatever in the middle if you want to tell me that it's okay. All right, good. We're getting a lot of high numbers. That's great. I want to see zeros too. That's important because I want to make sure to catch up if there's things that are not making sense. Okay, let's do one more thing here. Let's kind of add 2 fields. So we've got account name. Is this going to work? I think this will work. Let's go back to the account object by backing out of this. Go to account, go to state. So now I think I want to say, I'm going to add the state. So now I've got 2 pieces of data that are going to give me a unique combination. I have a state, and then I'm going to have multiple accounts within that state. Let's actually pull the account out now and just kind of run it with just the state. So in every state, how much money am I making? In California, 187,000. That's really valuable info right there. So we have, and then there's of course some opportunities that are related to accounts that are not listed in a state. So this is a data quality issue. You might want to go look at these. So we have 10 unique states represented. Now let's add the account name. I'm assuming that my data has multiple accounts per state. So we'll put that right here. We had 10 rows before. Now we got 13. So let's order it by billing state. So in California, there's 3 accounts, and they're all, and so it's kind of like showing, it's kind of like the report we did before without the state, but just kind of showing that because we're adding more unaggregated, non-aggregated fields, it is saying, okay, now I got to deal with more unique values. So I'm going to make my calculations per row, which is going to change it. Now I'm going to break merge fields or metric fields. So watch this. Let's just, let's run this, get a mental picture. So we have like 5 records that are unclaimed to a state, 9 in Arizona, 240,000 in Arizona. Okay. Now let's say, oh, I'm going to just throw in the opportunity ID. Opportunity ID, throw it in at the end. Let's run it. We have now broken the metric fields. That's because we've added a piece of data that's unique to every opportunity. So there's no aggregation that could be made right now, because there's nothing inside an opportunity that we would aggregate to. This is now down to the lowest level, 1 record per opportunity. So when I ask for how many opportunities exist for this sample account here, I'm going to get 1 because it's including this data as part of its calculation. Because remember, every non-aggregate field that you're adding is creating more of a unique string of values that these metric fields have to calculate up to. And there's nothing to calculate up to. So this close date being the highest, this is just this opportunity's close date. This amount is just this opportunity's amount. The highest amount, same thing. So we've broken it. This is really important because you will get into a conundrum where you have enough unique data that is in your report that your aggregate fields or your metric fields are not working. So make sure that you think about, what object am I working on? What object am I pulling my metric field from? And how is it summing things up? Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to open it for questions after if you want to talk more about this. But it's important that if you're using metric fields, you're assuming that there's going to be some deduplication of data that goes along with it. Okay, what time is it? Okay, we're almost out of time. I want to move on here. And I want to, okay, this is kind of a really cool, no, we already did that essentially. I wanted to show my cool use case. Let me make sure. Yeah, let me go back here. So unique count of years, including purchases. This is just a fun gem. I like to use the term Apsona gems because there's so many of them hidden here. So the other day, a customer said, I want to look back at the last 10 fiscal years, and I want to send a letter or something. I wasn't sure what the result was. I want to send something out to any account that gave at least once in 6 distinct years within a 10-year time frame. So I need to see at least 1 opportunity in 1 year, 1 opportunity in a different year, up to 6. And if they've only given 5 years out of the 10, I'm not going to email them, only if they gave 6 out of the 10. And we struggled a little bit to give the right report. I got off the call and then I was making some coffee and it hit me. I was like, oh, metric fields, let's do this. So I think I have the report here. I think I built a little test report to kind of show it. Did I do it? Yeah, number of years. Okay, so I'm just going to run it and then we're going to break it down. So this filter is saying only show me opportunities if they are within the last 5 fiscal years. So the way I did that is I chose opportunity close date, not a metric field, but just the close date itself. And then I said it's in range. And then when I opened up the in range window, you get a lot of options. You can just choose a range manually by day, by month, by quarter, by year, or a relative range. And that's what I did. That way this report can roll with you. Every year you run it, you can use it over again without changing the filters. I said from the last 5 fiscal years, so kind of 5 fiscal years ago, to this fiscal year, so within a range. So now I'm only going to look at opportunities that are within that range. And then let's say that my goal is to only send something to accounts that have 3 or more years worth of purchases within that 5-year range. How do I do that? That was kind of where I was struggling. The way that I got there, let me go, this is saying close date year count. So let me kind of show you how I got there. It did require a formula field. I added a formula field. It's called close date year, and it is a formula field that just basically grabs the year of the close date, just so that you get that unique value of year, and it displays it. So it's a new field. And then what I did is I did a metric field on that close date year, and I chose count distinct. And by doing that, it's saying if they gave in 2018, 2019, 2021. They skipped a year there, but those are all 3 unique values, those 3 years, and therefore I get a count of 3. That's how I was able to get to this report. And then what I could do is say, let's say that I only wanted it if it were 4 and above, because I think most of these are 3. Then I would essentially filter by the metric field. So you can filter by metric fields. So I filter by close date year, count distinct, being greater than 3, let's say. That's just going to leave the 4s and above. Save and run. Now I just get my 4s. So you could filter by metric fields too. And I just think that's phenomenal because you're doing the calculation in the report, but you're filtering the report. It's just kind of like which way is it happening? It's kind of magic to me. So I just thought that was a really cool use case that I think is more applicable than people realize. Okay, I'm going to spend just a few more minutes and then we'll jump into Q&A. And if we don't have anything, we will just move on with our day. And that is talking a little bit about how reports can help in mail merges. I'm going to say them and then show them a little bit. So this is not a document and email merge training, but reports are really key for them. So I just wanted to kind of throw some things out. So you can run a mail merge if you're familiar with that tool from our object tab. So I could be just in opportunities straight up here, and I could pick a subset of records and I can run a mail merge right here on those records. Or I can do it from a report. So I could run a report, and I can do a mail merge from that report. In general, I tend to suggest that reports are a better way to start for merge actions, because when you run a report, you see the records that are being generated based on your filters, which you do in the list view, but it's just a clearer window into all of the records because you have all the fields there. If you're missing data in a field, like you can see it in the report, and that tells you why it didn't merge into the template. When you're just working on an object tab, you get your list of records. So like right here, I see the fields that I'm going to merge in. If I'm on an object tab, I see the record, I can see the details, but it's just not as intuitive. It's not as clear to say if there's an issue. It's harder to look into the data to see why that issue exists. So I always suggest starting from a report if you can for merge actions. And you get more access to more data, so more related objects. So if I'm doing a mail merge from a list view, I don't know that I can try this out here. Let's see if I can get to the right step. You can map to opportunity fields because I'm on an opportunity object, and I can look up to a count, but I can't look down necessarily, which sometimes is not important, but sometimes it is. You just have a little bit less flexibility in terms of what fields you include. When I'm in a report, I have more access because of what we talked about in the past, which is, when you're looking at your objects in your report, you've got all the child objects. You can grab a metric field of the most recent, child record related to your opportunity, put that in a report, and now it's available to you, whereas that's not the case in list views. So I always suggest starting with reports for merge actions. If you plan on saving the output of your merge action to the Salesforce record, so you're going to create 1 letter per opportunity, and you want to save that letter as a related record, like a file to your opportunity, make sure you include the record ID in your report. So you always want to include the record ID if you plan on attaching it. And I pulled up a tab here just to kind of show that, hopefully right here. So the last step of your merge action, this step 4, you have logging options. Logging options allow you to set field values on records once you run a merge. So if it's a receipt, you could say, I receipted that opportunity. I'm going to check a box that says I did so. You can make those updates here. You can add tasks to records to follow up. Hey, I just sent out this appeal. I want to follow up with these accounts in 5 days. You can set tasks on all those accounts. And you can save the output, as I just mentioned, as a file. You cannot do these things unless you have the record ID in the report, because Apsona doesn't know, it needs a way to get to those records. So that's one thing that's important to remember, is include IDs in reports if you plan on saving data on the records. One other, let's see, what are my other 2 things? Merge templates with, okay, I might talk about that very quickly. The other thing I wanted to say is, if you're creating separate records as your output for your merge, as opposed to one big record, one big file that you're going to print, if you're creating separate files, you have to name them. And Apsona asks you, what do you want to name these files when they're generated? And it needs a report field. So you can put a field in your report that you'll use as the naming convention for the files that are created, or you can sometimes make a formula or a calculated field that can kind of like squish together some title with a date and all that kind of thing. You can do that via formula or calculated field. So those are just some kind of report related tips and tricks as you're using your reports for mail merge. I think we're going to conclude there. I'm not going to talk about the sublist data sources. We'll save that for the merge trainings. If you want to learn more, as always, you can email us at sales@Apsona, support@Apsona. Got a great YouTube channel, shared that playlist earlier. We also have office hours. If you don't mind putting this link in, Rob, that'd be great.
I got it.
Always welcome twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays for our office hours. And as always, we have our great support documentation. And these are just the URLs in case somebody needs to look at the video and type them in manually. And I think that's it. Okay, so next session, we're going to start dip our toes into multi-step reporting. Very exciting. So look forward to that.